You quit too easily on everything you start, abandoning projects when they become difficult or uncomfortable, walking away from challenges the moment they require sustained effort, giving up on goals when you feel tired or discouraged, stopping completely when facing criticism or setbacks, and quitting constantly on dreams and ambitions the instant they demand more than you feel capable of giving in that moment. This pattern of chronic quitting is systematically destroying your potential by preventing you from ever reaching the levels of capability you could achieve, destroying your success by ensuring nothing you start ever reaches completion or generates results, destroying your achievement by keeping you trapped in cycles of beginning and abandoning rather than finishing and succeeding, destroying your dreams by teaching your unconscious mind that goals are meant to be abandoned rather than accomplished, and destroying your future by creating a track record of failure that erodes confidence and makes each subsequent quit easier than the last. That is the fundamental problem destroying your life. Quitting creates immediate failure in whatever you abandon. Failure creates deep, lasting regret about potential unrealized and opportunities wasted, and regret creates ongoing psychological suffering that compounds over years as you accumulate more abandoned dreams and unfinished projects. But persistence creates inevitable success, because continuing despite difficulty eventually leads to breakthrough and achievement. Success creates more achievement as each completion builds confidence and capability for the next challenge. And achievement creates profound fulfillment that comes only from finishing what you started and realizing goals you once thought impossible. The never quit mindset creates unstoppable results in every area of life, because refusing to quit means eventually succeeding at everything you attempt, guaranteeing achievement through sheer persistence that outlasts all obstacles and setbacks. This audiobook teaches persistent psychology mastery through understanding why people quit and how to eliminate quitting patterns permanently, the neuroscience of mental toughness that reveals how to build unshakable resilience, the practices of quitting elimination that systematically remove the option of giving up, and the systems of unstoppable thinking that create the mental frameworks, making persistence automatic rather than requiring constant willpower and motivation. Stop quitting the moment things get hard or uncomfortable and start persisting relentlessly until breakthrough happens and success becomes inevitable. Stop abandoning projects when they require effort and start finishing everything you begin regardless of difficulty or duration. Stop giving up on dreams when facing obstacles and start developing the bulletproof mindset that makes quitting impossible. Bulletproof mind never breaks under pressure. Unstoppable thinking never accepts defeat. Never quit mentality guarantees eventual success, and persistent action produces inevitable achievement. Beginning now. Chapter 1. You quit too easily. Recognize your quitting patterns. You quit far too easily on everything you start, abandoning projects and goals at the first sign of real difficulty rather than persisting through the challenges that separate those who succeed from those who perpetually fail. This chronic quitting pattern manifests through specific recognizable behaviors that you can observe in yourself. Once you understand what to look for and become honest about your actual track record rather than the story you tell yourself about why things didn't work out. Difficulty quitting appears when you abandon endeavors the moment they become genuinely challenging, stopping when the effort required exceeds your initial expectations and comfort level, and giving up when progress slows from the exciting beginning phase to the grinding middle phase where real work happens. Discomfort quitting operates when you walk away from goals the instant you feel uncomfortable physically or emotionally, stopping when anxiety or fear intensifies beyond your current tolerance threshold, and abandoning projects when they push you outside your established comfort zone where everything feels manageable and safe. Quitting creates failure and regret. Persistence creates success and fulfillment. Finish or accumulate abandoned dreams. Fatigue quitting manifests when you give up on commitments the moment you feel tired rather than resting briefly, and then continuing, stopping when your energy depletes temporarily instead of understanding that fatigue is a normal part of sustained effort, and quitting when initial enthusiasm wanes and you no longer feel excited about work that has become routine. Criticism quitting appears when you abandon goals after receiving negative feedback from others, stopping when people disapprove of your choices or express doubt about your capabilities, and giving up when facing judgment that triggers your insecurities and makes continuing feel too emotionally painful. Setback quitting operates when you walk away immediately after encountering obstacles that weren't part of your original plan, stopping when experiencing any failure or mistake rather than viewing these as normal part of any achievement process, and abandoning projects after setbacks convince you that success is impossible and continuing would be wasting more time and energy on something doomed to fail. The quit cycle operates destructively through predictable stages that repeat across different goals and projects throughout your life. You start something new with genuine enthusiasm and optimism, believing this time will be different and you'll follow through to completion. You encounter difficulty, discomfort, fatigue, criticism, or setbacks that weren't part of your imagined easy path to success. You feel overwhelmed by challenges and begin doubting whether you have what it takes to succeed, whether the goal is even worth pursuing, whether you should have started in the first place. You quit to escape the negative feelings that persisting would require you to tolerate, experiencing immediate relief as pressure and discomfort disappear. This relief is temporary because long-term regret follows as you realize you've added another abandoned project to your growing collection of unfinished dreams. You repeat this exact pattern with your next endeavor, each cycle making the quitting habit more ingrained and automatic until giving up becomes your default response to any sustained challenge. Research by Angela Duckworth on grit demonstrates conclusively that persistence and perseverance for long-term goals predict success far more accurately than talent, intelligence, or initial advantage. Her studies show that grit is a better predictor of achievement than IQ across diverse domains from military training to sales performance to academic success, and that those who persist despite repeated setbacks achieve exponentially more over their lifetimes than those who quit when facing challenges regardless of how talented or intelligent the quitters might be. Quitting creates failure and regret. Persistence creates success and fulfillment. Finish or accumulate abandoned dreams. The devastating cost of chronic quitting accumulates over years and decades, preventing you from ever discovering what you're truly capable of achieving because you never persist long enough to reach your actual potential. Each quit erodes your confidence progressively as your unconscious mind accumulates evidence that you're someone who doesn't finish things, can't be trusted to follow through, lacks the toughness that success requires. Opportunities pass you by because unfinished projects generate exactly zero results or returns regardless of how much effort you invested before quitting. Regret compounds as you accumulate more abandoned dreams and look back on life filled with what-ifs and could-have-beens rather than actual achievements and completed goals. Recognition of your quitting patterns requires brutal honesty about your actual track record rather than the justifications you've created for why each abandonment was different and reasonable. Track what you've started versus actually finished over the past year, identifying the ratio of begun projects to completed ones. Identify your specific quit triggers by examining what consistently causes you to abandon goals. Is it difficulty, discomfort, fatigue, criticism, or setbacks that reliably triggers your quit response? Acknowledge patterns across different life domains rather than pretending each quit is isolated incident, seeing the common thread that connects abandoned fitness goals to abandoned business projects to abandoned relationship commitments to abandoned skill development efforts. You recognize quitting patterns now. Next, you must understand the psychology. Chapter 2. Understand quitting psychology. The neuroscience of giving up. Quitting operates through specific neurological and psychological mechanisms that make giving up feel not just tempting, but absolutely necessary and completely justified, even when persisting would lead directly to the success you claim to want. Understanding these mechanisms doesn't make quitting impulses disappear magically, but reveals that quit urges are biological survival responses rather than accurate assessments of whether continuing is actually possible or worthwhile, enabling you to recognize these impulses for what they are and choose persistence despite them. The discomfort avoidance system in your brain constantly scans your environment and internal state for any threats to your survival or well-being, triggering powerful quit impulses whenever you experience physical or emotional discomfort beyond your current tolerance threshold. Your amygdala, the ancient threat detection center deep in your brain, perceives any significant difficulty or discomfort as potential danger requiring immediate escape, activating the fight-or-flight response that creates an overwhelming biological urge to quit whatever is causing the uncomfortable sensations you're experiencing. Quitting is biological impulse, not truth. Understanding enables persistence. Recognize pattern or remain controlled. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational decision-making center that should override these primitive survival impulses with logical assessment of whether the difficulty actually threatens you, requires significantly more metabolic energy than amygdala activation does. This means quitting becomes the path of least resistance neurologically when your willpower and decision-making capacity deplete throughout the day, making evening hours particularly vulnerable to quit decisions as your prefrontal cortex exhausts while your amygdala continues operating at full strength. The dopamine motivation system plays a critical role in quitting patterns because starting new projects generates exciting dopamine hits as you imagine the possibilities and feel the thrill of beginning something fresh. However, sustained effort without immediate visible rewards causes your dopamine levels to drop significantly, creating a biological drive to quit the current unrewarding activity and seek new dopamine hits by starting something else that provides that initial excitement rush again. This neurochemical pattern explains why chronic quitters constantly start new projects with enthusiasm, but abandon them once the exciting novelty wears off and the grinding middle phase begins. Research by Roy Baumeister on ego depletion reveals that willpower functions as a limited resource that depletes progressively throughout each day with every decision you make and every impulse you resist. This means you become increasingly likely to quit as your decision-making capacity exhausts, explaining why you can resist quit impulses successfully in the morning but surrender to them by evening when your willpower reserves have depleted completely through the accumulated decisions and self-control efforts of your day. The mental models and beliefs you hold about difficulty determine your personal quit threshold and whether challenges trigger persistence or immediate abandonment. If you believe unconsciously that difficulty signals you're on a wrong path and should redirect your efforts elsewhere, you will quit automatically whenever things get hard because your interpretive framework tells you challenge means mismatch between you and goal. If you believe instead that difficulty signals growth, progress, and that you're pushing against your current limits in exactly the way that creates expansion, you will persist through challenges because your mental model interprets the same difficulty as positive evidence rather than warning sign. The narrative you tell yourself during difficult moments either enables persistence or triggers immediate quitting through the stories you create about what difficulty means. Failure narratives like this is too hard for me. I can't do this. I'm not capable of this level of challenge. Or I don't have what it takes. Activate your quitting patterns automatically by framing difficulty as evidence of your inadequacy. Growth narratives like this is challenging, but I'm learning and developing capability. Difficulty means I'm pushing my limits and expanding my capacity, or I can figure this out through persistence and problem-solving enable continuation despite discomfort by framing the same difficulty as positive evidence of growth. Quitting is biological impulse, not truth. Understanding enables persistence. Recognize pattern or remain controlled. Your identity beliefs shape quitting patterns most profoundly, because if you see yourself fundamentally as someone who finishes what they start, you persist automatically through difficulty because quitting would violate your core sense of who you are. If you identify as someone who starts enthusiastically but doesn't actually finish things, quitting becomes self-fulfilling prophecy as you unconsciously behave in ways that confirm your identity beliefs about yourself, making each quit reinforce your quitter identity and make subsequent quits easier and more automatic. You understand quitting psychology now. Next, you must reframe difficulty. Chapter 3. Reframe difficulty as growth. Change your relationship with challenge. Your interpretation of difficulty determines whether you quit immediately or persist automatically. With those who view challenges as threatening obstacles quitting at first resistance, while those who perceive difficulty as growth opportunity persisting naturally through the same objective circumstances. Most chronic quitters interpret difficulty through a threat-based framework, where challenge signals something is fundamentally wrong with their chosen path. Struggle means they lack the necessary talent or capability to succeed, and obstacles indicate they should quit immediately to find an easier route that better matches their abilities. This threat-based interpretation triggers automatic quit responses because your brain's primary function is protecting you from perceived danger, making quitting feel like intelligent self-preservation rather than failure to persist. When you interpret difficulty as signal that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing or attempting something beyond your capabilities, your amygdala activates fight or flight response, and quitting becomes the flight option that promises relief from threat your brain perceives in the challenge you're facing. Difficulty signals growth, not inadequacy. Reframe challenge as progress. Embrace struggle or avoid growth. Growth mindset interpretation completely transforms your response to identical difficulty by viewing challenges as evidence of progress rather than problems requiring escape. Understanding struggle as necessary and normal part of skill development rather than signal of inadequacy. And recognizing obstacles as valuable opportunities to build capabilities you'll need for ultimate success rather than roadblocks indicating you should quit and redirect efforts elsewhere. Research by Carol Dweck on growth versus fixed mindset reveals that those with fixed mindset believe abilities are static traits you either have or don't have, making difficulty evidence that you lack necessary talent and should quit to avoid further confirmation of inadequacy. Those with growth mindset believe abilities develop progressively through sustained effort and deliberate practice, making difficulty signal that you're at your learning edge where real growth happens and capabilities expand through persistence despite discomfort. The reframe practice involves catching yourself in threat interpretation moments when facing difficulty and consciously choosing growth interpretation instead of automatically accepting your brain's threat assessment. When you notice yourself thinking this is too hard for someone like me, deliberately reframe to this is building my capability beyond current levels. When the thought I can't do this arises, add the word yet to create I can't do this yet, transforming fixed assessment into growth trajectory. When you feel the impulse to quit because something seems impossible, reframe to I'm at my growth edge where expansion happens. Difficulty as feedback rather than verdict means challenges reveal specifically where you need to develop rather than whether you should continue pursuing your goal at all. Easy tasks that you can already perform don't build any new capability or expand your capacity in any meaningful way, while difficult tasks that push you beyond current comfortable limits create growth through forcing you to develop abilities you don't yet possess. The discomfort you feel during challenge is not warning to stop, but rather confirmation that you're expanding beyond previous limitations. The discomfort growth connection requires understanding that absolutely all meaningful growth happens outside your comfort zone, where things feel manageable and safe. Discomfort during challenge signals you're expanding your capacity and building new capabilities rather than indicating something is wrong or you should quit. Permanent comfort equals permanent stagnation because staying within current capabilities means never developing beyond present level, making discomfort tolerance essential for any achievement beyond what you can already do easily. Difficulty signals growth, not inadequacy. Reframe challenge as progress. Embrace struggle or avoid growth. Embracing difficulty as necessary rather than avoiding it as problem means actively seeking challenges that push your limits intentionally, welcoming obstacles as growth opportunities rather than hoping for easy path, treating setbacks as valuable feedback for adjustment rather than evidence of inadequacy, and viewing criticism as useful information for improvement rather than personal attack requiring defensive withdrawal. This reframe doesn't make difficulty feel comfortable or eliminate the discomfort that challenges create, but it transforms struggle from automatic quit trigger into persistence fuel because you understand that discomfort isn't signal to stop, but rather evidence that you're building the exact capabilities that achievement of your goal requires. You reframe difficulty now. Next, you must build commitment mechanisms. Chapter 4. Build commitment mechanisms. Make quitting harder than continuing. Commitment mechanisms are structural changes that make quitting significantly more difficult and costly than persisting. Removing moment-to-moment willpower from the persistence equation by creating external forcing functions that make continuation the path of least resistance. Most people rely entirely on willpower and motivation to persist through challenges, but willpower depletes predictably throughout each day and motivation fluctuates wildly based on emotional state, making quitting inevitable when either resource runs low during difficult moments that define whether you ultimately succeed or fail. Commitment mechanisms work by systematically raising the cost of quitting through creating consequences that make giving up more painful than continuing despite difficulty. Public commitment tells others about your goals and creates social accountability that makes quitting publicly embarrassing and damages your reputation. Financial commitment requires paying money up front that you lose completely by quitting, increasing the tangible cost of giving up beyond just lost time and effort. Identity commitment involves publicly identifying as someone who finishes what they start, creating cognitive dissonance when considering quitting because giving up would violate your stated identity and prove you're not who you claim to be. Willpower fails, but commitment mechanisms work. Structure persistence through external force. Commit structurally or rely on depleting willpower. Schedule commitment sets specific predetermined times for working on your goal, removing daily decision-making about whether to continue and making the behavior automatic rather than dependent on fluctuating motivation levels in any given moment. The irreversibility principle makes commitment mechanisms maximally effective by creating situations where quitting becomes more psychologically and practically painful than persisting through whatever difficulty you're facing, such as burning boats so retreat becomes impossible, making public promises that quitting would obviously violate, or investing significant resources that quitting would waste completely. Accountability partnerships create powerful external commitment through finding someone pursuing a similar goal, checking in regularly about specific progress and setbacks, sharing struggles and challenges openly, and maintaining mutual commitment to continue when individual motivation inevitably wanes. The cost-benefit rebalance that commitment mechanisms create shifts the fundamental equation of persistence versus quitting. Before implementing mechanisms, quitting feels easier than persisting through discomfort and difficulty. After implementing mechanisms, quitting costs significantly more than continuing despite the challenge. Stakes raising through progressive commitment means starting with small public commitment that creates initial accountability, increasing visibility and expanding your audience over time, adding financial stakes as project progresses and investment deepens, and creating increasingly irreversible investments that make turning back psychologically impossible because sunk costs become too significant to walk away from without massive loss. Research by Dan Ariely on pre-commitment demonstrates that people who pre-commit to goals through external structures achieve them far more frequently than those relying purely on willpower and internal motivation, and that external accountability structures succeed consistently where internal motivation fails repeatedly. Common effective commitment mechanisms include prepaying for courses or coaching that you lose money on by quitting, scheduling sessions with trainers or coaches that you can't easily cancel without consequence, joining groups where attendance is tracked publicly and absence is noticed, posting progress updates publicly on social media where quitting becomes visible failure, and making specific bets with friends about completion where quitting costs you money and pride simultaneously. Willpower fails, but commitment mechanisms work. Structure persistence through external force. Commit structurally or rely on depleting willpower. The key principle underlying all effective commitment mechanisms is removing your ability to quit easily in moments of weakness by making continuation structurally the path of least resistance rather than quitting, transforming persistence from constant willpower battle requiring daily decisions into structural inevitability, where continuing is simply easier than dealing with consequences of giving up, creating automatic persistence that doesn't depend on motivation or willpower that both deplete. You build commitment mechanisms now. Next, you must manage discomfort. Chapter 5. Manage discomfort tolerance. Expand your suffering capacity. Your discomfort tolerance determines your personal quit threshold, with low tolerance causing you to quit at minor discomfort, while high tolerance enables persisting through significant challenges that would make most people surrender immediately. Most chronic quitters have extremely low discomfort tolerance that developed through years of immediately escaping any suffering, quitting the moment they experience any physical or emotional pain beyond their habitual minimal comfort level, and never building capacity to tolerate the inevitable discomfort that all meaningful achievement requires. Discomfort tolerance is learned capacity, not fixed trait determined by genetics or personality, expanding progressively through deliberate practice of staying present with discomfort rather than immediately escaping it through quitting or distraction. The discomfort types that reliably trigger quitting include physical discomfort like fatigue, pain, hunger, and temperature extremes that your body wants to escape, emotional discomfort like anxiety, fear, self-doubt, and embarrassment that your mind wants to avoid, psychological discomfort like boredom, frustration, confusion, and uncertainty that drain motivation, and social discomfort like judgment, criticism, rejection, and conflict that threaten your sense of safety and belonging. Low tolerance causes constant quitting. High tolerance enables persistent achievement. Expand capacity or remain limited. Your automatic response to any discomfort is immediate escape through quitting the activity causing suffering. But this deeply ingrained response pattern can be systematically retrained through progressive exposure and deliberate tolerance building. Discomfort tolerance training involves deliberately exposing yourself to manageable levels of discomfort, staying present with uncomfortable sensations without immediately escaping them, gradually increasing both intensity and duration of discomfort exposure over time, and building your capacity to persist despite suffering that would have caused you to quit previously. Cold exposure practices build discomfort tolerance remarkably effectively by deliberately entering cold water that creates intense discomfort, staying despite overwhelming urge to escape immediately, breathing consciously through physical sensations that every instinct screams to avoid, and proving directly to yourself that you can tolerate significant discomfort without dying, breaking, or suffering permanent damage. Exercise tolerance training expands your suffering capacity through pushing past the point where you desperately want to stop, continuing when every physical instinct screams to quit immediately, finishing prescribed repetitions regardless of burning fatigue, and building mental toughness alongside physical endurance through refusing to surrender to discomfort. Meditation practices increase discomfort tolerance by requiring you to sit completely still despite physical discomfort for maintaining posture, observing difficult emotions as they arise without reacting or escaping, staying present with intense boredom and restlessness without seeking distraction, and building fundamental capacity to simply be with whatever is happening rather than constantly seeking comfort and avoiding any unpleasant sensations or feelings. The discomfort growth connection means absolutely all significant achievement requires tolerating substantial discomfort, because nothing genuinely worthwhile comes easily or comfortably. Growth happens specifically at the edge of your current capacity, which by definition feels uncomfortable, challenging, and sometimes overwhelming, making discomfort avoidance guarantee that you'll remain exactly where you are forever. Research by Andrew Huberman on stress tolerance shows that deliberately exposing yourself to controlled stress progressively increases your stress threshold over time. What initially feels completely overwhelming becomes increasingly manageable with repeated exposure, and tolerance genuinely builds like muscle through progressive overload that systematically expands capacity. Low tolerance causes constant quitting. High tolerance enables persistent achievement. Expand capacity or remain limited. The key insight transforming your relationship with discomfort is understanding that suffering during challenge doesn't mean something is wrong or you should quit to escape it, but rather means you're actively building tolerance and capability that will serve you for entire life, making every moment of discomfort tolerated an investment in expanded capacity for future challenges. You manage discomfort now. Next, you must develop process focus. Chapter 6. Develop process focus. Measure effort, not results. Outcome obsession creates inevitable quitting because when results don't appear quickly enough according to your impatient timeline, you conclude that effort is being wasted and quit to avoid continued investment in an apparently failing endeavor that seems unlikely to ever produce the success you expected. Process focus eliminates this dangerous quit trigger by measuring daily effort and consistency rather than end results, creating sustainable motivation that persists powerfully regardless of whether visible outcomes have appeared yet or progress seems frustratingly slow compared to your initial expectations. Most chronic quitters focus exclusively and obsessively on outcomes, checking constantly whether results are appearing at the rate they expected, becoming progressively discouraged when progress seems slower than anticipated or invisible despite genuine effort, comparing their current disappointing state to their desired end state, and feeling completely overwhelmed by the enormous gap, and quitting when the distance between here and there feels impossibly insurmountable and continuing seems like throwing good effort after bad. Outcome focus triggers quitting when results delay. Process focus enables persistence through measuring effort. Focus on controllable actions or quit when outcomes don't appear. This outcome focus makes quitting mathematically inevitable because significant results require extended time to appear while you're checking for them daily. Early progress is often completely invisible despite real growth occurring beneath the surface. Comparing beginning to end creates overwhelming sense of impossible distance that paralyzes action, and motivation derived purely from outcomes disappears completely when outcomes predictably don't appear immediately despite your unrealistic expectations for rapid, visible progress. Process focus shifts measurement entirely from results you cannot control to daily actions you control completely, asking whether you showed up today regardless of feelings or motivation, whether you completed planned work regardless of quality or visible outcomes, Whether you maintained consistency regardless of external circumstances or internal resistance, and whether you honored your commitment regardless of fluctuating motivation levels that make effort feel pointless on difficult days. This focus creates genuinely sustainable persistence because showing up consistently is entirely within your control, while results depend on countless factors beyond your influence. Daily consistency is measurable and achievable immediately, while outcome victories remain distant and uncertain. Process victory happens literally every single day you execute your plan, while outcome victory is always somewhere in the uncertain future, and celebrating daily effort creates positive reinforcement, regardless of whether results have appeared yet. The effort-based identity develops naturally through sustained process focus, where you progressively define success as maintaining consistent effort rather than achieving specific outcomes. Increasingly see yourself as someone who does the required work regardless of results. Measure your worthiness and competence by consistency of action, not achievement of outcomes. And celebrate showing up every day, even when progress seems completely invisible and outcomes feel impossibly distant. Research by James Clear on systems versus goals reveals that goal-focused people quit predictably when goals aren't achieved within their expected timeline, while systems-focused people persist indefinitely because they measure adherence to their daily system rather than achievement of distant outcomes. His research shows that winners and losers often have identical goals, but winners have superior systems for daily execution, while losers focus on outcomes and quit when results don't appear quickly. Daily action tracking maintains process focus practically through writing down each day whether you completed your planned actions regardless of outcomes. Tracking consecutive days, maintaining consistency to build visible streak. Measuring specific inputs you control completely rather than outputs you cannot control. And celebrating process victories immediately each day rather than waiting for distant results that may take months or years to appear. Outcome focus triggers quitting when results delay. Process focus enables persistence through measuring effort. Focus on controllable actions or quit when outcomes don't appear. The paradox of process focus is that focusing on daily process rather than outcomes actually produces better ultimate outcomes, because sustained, consistent effort over extended time inevitably generates results, while outcome focus produces premature quitting before results have sufficient time to appear, ensuring that outcomes never materialize because you quit too soon. You develop process focus now. Next, you must use implementation intentions. Chapter 7. Use implementation intentions. Remove decision points that enable quitting. Implementation intentions eliminate countless quit opportunities by predefining exactly what you'll do in specific situations before they arise, removing real-time decision-making where quitting becomes tempting option during moments of weakness, fatigue, or diminished willpower. Research by Peter Gallwitzer demonstrates that implementation intentions dramatically increase follow-through rates by creating specific if-then plans that trigger automatically when conditions are met, removing the need for motivation or willpower in the moment, and making desired behavior automatic rather than requiring decision that opens door to quitting. Most people leave their behavior to moment-by-moment choice throughout each day, constantly deciding whether to continue working toward goals or quit based on current feelings, fluctuating motivation levels, available energy state, and whatever external circumstances happen to be present. This approach creates literally countless opportunities to quit because in any given moment, quitting almost always feels easier and more appealing than persisting through difficulty, especially when willpower has depleted and motivation has disappeared completely. Moment-to-moment decisions enable quitting. Implementation intentions create automaticity, predefine behavior, or constantly choose in moments when quitting tempts. Implementation intentions remove these dangerous decision points through absolute pre-commitment that eliminates choice in the moment. If it's 6 a.m. Monday, Then I will work on my project for 1 hour regardless of how I feel or whether I want to. If I feel like quitting during work session, then I will continue for 10 more minutes before allowing myself to reassess. If I encounter unexpected obstacle, then I will try 3 different solutions before even considering stopping. If I feel completely overwhelmed, then I will break task into the smallest possible piece and complete just that piece. The automaticity created by properly structured implementation intentions completely bypasses motivation by removing it from the equation entirely. You're not deciding whether to act based on how you feel in the moment. You're simply executing a predetermined plan that was decided when you were thinking clearly and feeling motivated. The behavior happens automatically when the trigger occurs because you've eliminated quitting as an available option in that specific predetermined situation. Trigger action planning makes implementation intentions maximally concrete and effective by identifying specific triggers like time, location, feeling, or situation, defining the specific action that follows the trigger automatically without deliberation, and linking trigger and action so firmly through repetition that the behavior becomes genuinely automatic and requires no willpower or motivation whatsoever. The if-then structure is absolutely critical to success because vague intentions fail predictably while specific if-then plans succeed reliably. Don't say vaguely, "I'll work on my goal when I feel motivated," which leaves everything to chance and feeling. Say specifically, "If it's 6 a.m. on weekdays, then I will work for 30 focused minutes," which creates automatic trigger that bypasses motivation completely and removes quitting as option during the predetermined window. Common quit-preventing implementation intentions include, "If I want to quit, then I will work 10 more minutes before reconsidering." If I feel overwhelmed by entire project, then I will identify and complete just the next smallest step. If I face obstacle I don't know how to solve, then I will try 3 different approaches before considering stopping. If I feel discouraged about lack of visible progress, then I will review my why and recommit to process focus rather than outcome obsession. Moment-to-moment decisions enable quitting. Implementation intentions create automaticity. Predefined behavior or constantly choose in moments when quitting tempts. The fundamental principle is removing quitting as an immediately available option by predefining exactly what you'll do in situations where quitting temptation predictably arises. Making persistence automatic rather than requiring constant willpower and repeated decisions that deplete your limited self-control and eventually enable quitting when willpower runs out completely. You use implementation intentions now. Next, you must cultivate rage. Chapter 8. Cultivate rage against quitting. Use anger as persistence fuel. Righteous anger against quitting can fuel unstoppable persistence when channeled correctly and deliberately, transforming fury at your past quitting patterns into fierce determination that makes giving up feel like unacceptable betrayal of yourself rather than relief from discomfort. Most people view anger as purely negative emotion that should be suppressed or avoided, but directed anger at your own quitting habit creates remarkably powerful motivation that exceeds what positive motivation alone can possibly generate during the most difficult moments when quitting tempts most strongly. Rage against weakness means viewing quitting as your personal enemy that has stolen countless opportunities and achievements from you, refusing absolutely to let difficulty defeat you, because surrendering feels like losing to weakness itself, feeling genuine fury when tempted to give up, because quitting would mean weakness wins again, and channeling that intense anger into continued action despite all obstacles, setbacks, and discomfort that would normally trigger your quit response. Fury at quitting fuels persistence. Controlled anger becomes determination. Channel rage productively or suppress powerful fuel. The self-betrayal frame transforms quitting from seemingly reasonable relief into completely unacceptable violation of self-trust and integrity. Quitting isn't just stopping effort or changing direction. It's directly betraying the version of yourself who made the original commitment and believed in the goal. Giving up isn't just acknowledging difficulty. It's proving to yourself that you're someone whose word means nothing and whose commitments can't be trusted. Stopping isn't just taking needed rest. It's confirming your deepest fear that you'll always quit when things get genuinely hard and never achieve anything requiring sustained persistence. This reframe makes quitting psychologically costly enough that persisting despite intense discomfort becomes genuinely easier than accepting the profound self-betrayal that quitting represents. The spite-based persistence taps into remarkably powerful motivation by wanting desperately to prove wrong everyone who ever doubted your capabilities, refusing to give critics and naysayers the satisfaction of being right about your inability to finish, being determined to succeed specifically because others expected you to quit like you always do, and channeling every doubt and criticism into fuel rather than accepting them as accurate assessment of your limitations. Research on motivation reveals that negative motivation like avoiding loss, proving doubters wrong, and refusing to accept failure often creates significantly stronger drive than positive motivation like achieving gain, making supporters proud, or wanting to succeed. This occurs because humans are fundamentally loss-averse and work substantially harder to avoid negative outcomes than to achieve equivalent positive outcomes, making anger at potential loss more motivating than excitement about potential gain. The controlled burn of anger means not letting rage consume you destructively or damage relationships, but directing it specifically and precisely at your quitting pattern itself. When tempted to quit, feel intense fury at that impulse rather than casually accepting it. When facing difficulty, channel anger at the challenge into fierce determination to overcome it rather than letting challenge defeat you. When doubting yourself, transform that doubt into rage against accepting limitation rather than surrendering to self-doubt. Fury at quitting fuels persistence. Controlled anger becomes determination. Channel rage productively or suppress powerful fuel. The key is making quitting feel psychologically worse than persisting through difficulty by attaching intense negative emotion to giving up and fierce pride to continuing regardless of obstacles, creating powerful emotional forcing function that makes persistence feel inevitable because quitting becomes psychologically unbearable and violates your core sense of who you are and what you refuse to accept from yourself. You cultivate rage now. Next, you must practice daily. Chapter 9. Practice never quit mindset daily. Build unstoppable mental toughness. Unstoppable mental toughness develops through consistent daily practice of specific exercises that systematically build your persistence capacity, progressively expand your discomfort tolerance, and establish anti-quit mental frameworks that make quitting psychologically impossible. 5 daily practices transform chronic quitters into unstoppable finishers who complete everything they begin regardless of difficulty, duration, or obstacles encountered along the way. Morning anti-quit commitment involves stating your absolute no-quit commitment clearly and definitively before the day begins and challenges arise, visualizing yourself persisting successfully through specific challenges you expect to face during the day ahead, pre-committing to continue regardless of how you feel when difficulty or discomfort inevitably appears, and setting crystal clear intention that quitting is simply not an available option today under any circumstances or for any reason. Mental toughness requires daily practice. Occasional effort creates no lasting change. Practice systematically or remain chronic quitter. Daily discomfort practice builds tolerance progressively through deliberately doing something genuinely uncomfortable every single day without exception, staying fully present with the discomfort rather than escaping mentally or physically, proving directly to yourself that you can tolerate suffering that once would have caused immediate quitting, and systematically expanding your capacity to persist despite difficulty that increases gradually over weeks and months. These discomfort practices can include cold showers that shock your system and trigger overwhelming urge to escape, difficult exercise that pushes beyond comfortable limits and creates intense burning fatigue, uncomfortable conversations that trigger anxiety and desire to avoid, or absolutely anything else that activates your quit impulse, but you complete anyway despite every instinct screaming to stop. Process tracking maintains essential focus on controllable effort rather than uncontrollable results by recording daily whether you completed your planned actions regardless of whether outcomes appeared. Tracking your consistency streak to build powerful identity as someone who shows up without exception. Measuring specific inputs you control completely rather than outputs you cannot control. And celebrating daily victories of showing up even when progress seems completely invisible and outcomes feel impossibly distant. Implementation intention review ensures your automatic if-then plans remain active and effective by reviewing situations where you were strongly tempted to quit but didn't, updating your implementation intentions based on actual quit triggers you experienced rather than imagined ones. Strengthening pre-commitments in areas where willpower wavered dangerously, and systematically eliminating decision points that enabled quit consideration rather than automatic persistence. Evening persistence reflection honestly assesses your day by noting specific moments you were tempted to quit but chose to continue instead, identifying particular triggers that activated your quit impulse most powerfully, acknowledging times when you successfully persisted through significant difficulty, celebrating measurable progress in building your never-quit identity, and planning specific improvements for tomorrow based on today's challenges and near-quit moments. The never-quit progression follows entirely predictable stages over consistent months of daily practice. Week 1 focuses primarily on recognition of your quit patterns and specific triggers. Weeks 2 through 4 involve conscious application of anti-quit techniques that feel forced and unnatural initially. Months 2 through 3 develop increasing consistency as persistence becomes progressively more natural. Months 4 through 6 achieve full integration where never-quit mindset operates automatically without requiring constant conscious effort. Mental toughness requires daily practice. Occasional effort creates no lasting change. Practice systematically or remain chronic quitter. Progress indicators include dramatically reduced quit temptation frequency, measurably increased discomfort tolerance, more projects finished than started for first time in your life, stronger identity as finisher rather than quitter, and automatic persistence even during most difficult moments when quitting once felt inevitable and necessary. You practice daily now. Finally, you must understand permanence. Chapter 10. Never quit mindset is permanent practice. Persistence requires daily maintenance. Never quit mindset is not permanent achievement you reach once and maintain effortlessly forever, but rather ongoing practice requiring daily maintenance and consistent attention throughout your entire life, because temporary practice creates only temporary persistence that disappears rapidly when you stop consciously developing your mental toughness. Without daily practice and deliberate maintenance, old quitting patterns inevitably return as neural pathways for giving up strengthen again through default use, while your hard-won persistence pathways weaken progressively through neglect and abandonment. Your discomfort tolerance that you worked months to expand will decrease steadily without regular exposure to challenge. Commitment mechanisms you established will erode and lose effectiveness without conscious maintenance and strengthening. Process focus will shift dangerously back to outcome obsession without deliberate daily attention. And implementation intentions will fade into vagueness without regular review and updating based on actual experience. Temporary practice creates temporary persistence. Permanent practice creates unstoppable mindset. Practice daily or return to quitting. Daily non-negotiables: maintain never quit mindset, permanently through morning anti-quit commitment that sets your intention and mental state before the day begins and challenges arise. Daily discomfort practice that keeps your tolerance expanded rather than contracting back to previous low levels. Process tracking that maintains essential focus on effort rather than results. Implementation intention review that keeps your automatic persistence systems active and effective. And evening. Persistence reflection that tracks progress honestly and identifies specific areas requiring focused attention and improvement. After months of consistent daily practice without skipping or making excuses, profound transformation occurs as you shift from consciously fighting quit impulses to automatically persisting through challenges, from deliberately applying anti-quit techniques to naturally finishing everything you start, from forcing yourself to continue to instinctively refusing to quit, and from requiring willpower to persist to finding quitting psychologically impossible because it violates your core identity. As someone who finishes what they begin regardless of difficulty or duration, integration progresses through entirely predictable stages that everyone experiences during this permanent transformation. Conscious incompetence means you're painfully aware of your quitting patterns, but can't yet consistently change them despite understanding what you should do differently. Conscious competence means you can persist effectively, but only through deliberate effort and conscious technique application. Unconscious competence means never quit mindset operates automatically as your default without requiring any conscious management or deliberate performance. This transformation requires months of consistent daily practice without exception, genuine patience with the discomfort of establishing new persistence patterns, willingness to fail occasionally and restart practice rather than abandoning it entirely, an absolute commitment to permanent daily maintenance rather than temporary improvement followed by inevitable regression to old quitting patterns. Never quit mindset becomes your fundamental identity through permanent daily practice that transforms you completely from chronic quitter to unstoppable finisher, from someone who abandons dreams to someone who achieves them, from accumulating regret about unfinished projects to accumulating achievement from completed goals, and from wondering what you could have been to becoming everything you're genuinely capable of being through refusing to quit on yourself ever again. Temporary practice creates temporary persistence. Permanent practice creates unstoppable mindset. Practice daily or return to quitting. You understand now that never quit mindset requires permanent daily practice to maintain the persistence capacity, discomfort tolerance, and anti-quit frameworks you've worked so hard to develop over months of consistent effort. Stop thinking you can develop mental toughness temporarily and then stop practicing while expecting it to remain, and start committing absolutely to daily practice as permanent lifestyle. Understanding that unstoppable mindset requires ongoing maintenance through consistent daily attention to the 5 practices that build and preserve your transformation from someone who quits on everything to someone who finishes absolutely everything they begin regardless of how hard it gets or how long it takes. You have learned 10 principles for never quit mindset. Stop quitting when things get hard and start persisting until breakthrough happens. Stop abandoning projects when uncomfortable and start finishing everything you begin. Unstoppable mindset never accepts defeat. Persistent action produces inevitable achievement. Never quit mentality guarantees eventual success. And mental toughness developed through permanent daily practice creates the unstoppable results that transform your entire life, starting immediately and continuing forever through commitment to never quitting on yourself or your dreams again. You have learned 10 principles for never quit mindset. You quit too easily. Recognize your quitting patterns. Understand quitting psychology, the neuroscience of giving up. Reframe difficulty as growth. Change your relationship with challenge. Build commitment mechanisms. Make quitting harder than continuing. Manage discomfort tolerance. Expand your suffering capacity. Develop process focus. Measure effort, not results. Use implementation intentions. Remove decision points that enable quitting. Cultivate rage against quitting. Use anger as persistence fuel. Practice never quit mindset daily. Build unstoppable mental toughness. Never quit mindset is permanent practice. Persistence requires daily maintenance. What matters now is action today. Identify one thing you're tempted to quit right now. Commit to continuing for one more day. 5 daily practices starting tomorrow. Morning anti-quit commitment. Daily discomfort practice. Process tracking. Implementation intention review. Evening persistence reflection. Every single day without exception. This builds unstoppable mindset. This creates inevitable success. Stop quitting when things get hard and start persisting until breakthrough happens. Stop abandoning projects when uncomfortable and start finishing everything you begin. Unstoppable mindset never accepts defeat. Persistent action produces inevitable achievement. Never quit mentality guarantees eventual success. And mental toughness developed through permanent daily practice creates the unstoppable results that transform your entire life, starting immediately and continuing forever.